No one wants.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for being here for this this September 23rd workshop for the Chundulak annexation. We're going to talk a little bit about the process of annexation. We'll talk about the pros and cons and the upside, and we'll talk about our meetings that we have had thus far with the residents there as well, and just make sure that we also can address and answer any questions or concerns that folks might have about the annexation itself or the process of moving forward with an annexation should council decide to move in that direction. So we've got everybody that we need online here tonight. So I believe that we're going to kick it over to our Town of Windermere planning expert, Brad Cornelius.
Real quick, sorry, Mayor.
Oh, I see. I just got your text. Sorry.
No worries, sir. Just so everybody knows, I'm in a parking lot over at Oakland Nature Preserve because my son had his first Cub Scouts outing tonight. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. Tonight's meeting is not an official town council workshop. What it is a public information workshop. That's why you didn't see agenda or any attachment. So if there is um, town council members on here, please feel free to comment. But remember that we're still subjected to the sunshine laws. And with that, I'll turn over to Brad, and then I'll take over from there, and then we'll go to Chief Ogden.
Thanks, Robert, for that clarification. So just so everyone's clear, like there's no voting or anything tonight. This is pure information and answering questions and education. Brad?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Robert. Again, I'm Brad Cornelius with Wade Trim, serving as your contracted town planner. So I will go over quickly about this annexation in the area. Again, this is the Chaine community. You can see here on the map that it's the area in the yellow with the hatching on it as well. That's the area considered for the annexation. It is approximately 103 acres. It's comprised of 74 properties or parcels. That includes the HOA properties like the private roads and stormwater and things like that are within that area. Currently, as of the last count, there are 51 single-family dwelling units. I believe the maximum that can be in there's room for about another 6. So maximum would be about 57. Currently in the county, it has a future land use of what's called rural settlement at a density of 1 unit per acre. And currently the county zoning on this property is country estate cluster, and that's what that RCEC is. And that's also consistent with the 1-to-1. An important thing about that I do want everybody to know is that matches us here in the town of Windermere. We have a maximum density for properties on a water body on a lake of 1 unit per acre. And off of the lake, it's 1 per 3/4 of an acre. So they are very similar to what we already are here in the town. Next, please. Tanya, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So in terms of the process, under Florida statute, there's 2 ways that it can occur. The first is known as a voluntary annexation, and that's when the property owner comes to the local government, comes to the town, says they want to be added to the city or to that local government. And that's a process where it's just a public hearing with that local government, and typically it's going to be just one individual property owner. The other way is an involuntary annexation, and that's where, in this case, the town or a local government, that they're the ones that initiate the annexation of areas that are adjacent to their existing boundary. And so those are the 2 ways. What's happening with the Chaine proposed annexation, this is what would be called an involuntary annexation, because the town is going through the process, and what that also then requires is a vote of the residents of the Chaine annexation area, whether or not they would be annexed or not into the process. So we are going through the involuntary annexation process. Next, please. What we've been doing is we have met with the residents several times in workshops, and we have heard very positive responses from the residents of Chaine du Lac. So we do believe this will be successful if this does move forward. But it does have to go to a referendum of the voters of Chaine du Lac. So that if the town council decides to move forward with this process, that would be the next step in this process, would be setting up and holding that referendum. The town has the option, but it's not required, to also bring this to a vote of the residents of the town, meaning to the registered voters of the town. But I believe at this point, the town council has decided, at least at this point, to only go to the vote to the voters of Chaine du Lac. However, that won't be determined until a future date when the ordinance is written to set the hearing or the vote, and that's when that final decision would be made on how that hearing would occur. Next, please. So with annexation, what's very important is we have to be sure that it's compliant with Florida statutes and the requirements for annexation. So what those are, it's under Chapter 171 of Florida statute. And the most important part of these requirements is that the area that's considered for annexation has to be contiguous or next to the town. And also that it's a compact area. It's not an area that just kind of follows along a roadway to get to some other place, that it's actually a compact area. This clearly meets both definitions. The Chaine du Lac area does. It is adjacent to the town. And also it's a very well-defined area. It doesn't just serpentine out. So we are consistent with that part of Florida statutes. Next, please. The other part of Florida statutes is that we have to look at the area to determine whether or not it's being used for urban purposes. Now, what's important here is this definition of urban purposes under the Florida statutes for annexation is very different and does not relate to all this discussion that's been happening in the county related to the charter amendments for annexations. Those are two completely separate, different things. The way the county talks about urban areas and what the requirement for an urban area is in statute. So under Florida statute, basically 60% of the lots to be annexed have to be less than 5 acres in size and being used for residential purposes. This area clearly meets that test. This area is being used for urban purposes as defined by Florida statutes for annexation. So we are compliant with that statutory requirement. Next, please. Also, what would happen is once this annexation, if this annexation moves forward and gets approved, the town would then have to do a future land use amendment and a rezoning on the property to then assign the town's comprehensive plan requirements as well as the town's land development requirements on the property. In the town's comprehensive plan, what it requires for areas that are annexed into the town, that it has to come into the town as a planned development. And why that's important and helpful, I think, for this proposed annexation is that it'll come along with what will be called a development agreement, or some people may call it an annexation agreement, where it'll set in place the standards and requirements that will apply for this area for annexation for future development. In discussions with the residents over the last year or so, it has been discussed that we will try to maintain as much as the Orange County standards as we can, subject to the town council's approval of that, because again, it's very similar to what we have in the town. There may be some where we're more restrictive that we might want to look at, but we will not be less restrictive than what the county has in this area. And that's an important part of this annexation, because I will tell everyone that is different than other jurisdictions when they do annexations. Usually a local government or a city wants to annex in a property to increase the density or development potential. That's not the case at all, what we're doing. This annexation would keep in place the development that's there and would not allow for it to expand or get bigger or change. Next, please. In terms of the timeline, we're actually in it now, so these dates aren't real good at the moment because we're already into this. So we have begun the process. We have prepared one of the things we have to do is do an annexation report, looking at all these different statutory requirements and also looking at the financial parts of this, both for the people being annexed as well as for the town. And we've completed that report and it is ready to be submitted to the county. So that is done and should be submitted to the county soon. Once that is submitted to the county, then we can prepare the ordinances and do all the noticing that's required to set up the referendum. After the referendum, then we go through the process of the final ordinance for the final annexation, as well as the land use change and the rezonings. So we're in this process. We're probably still 60 to 90 to 120 days out, for all of that to get completed. Next, please. Well, look, and that's what I said there. 60 to 90 days. So it's probably closer to 90 to 120 with all the noticing. And also it's dependent on when the referendum can be scheduled, is an important part of that annexation timeline. So with that, those administrative issues, I think Robert will cover these.
Thank you, Brad. And just a little background too, is that the town of Windermere didn't aggressively go after Chaine. We had several residents in the HOA approach the town of Windermere with an interest in annexing into the town of Windermere. So I know there may be a fear out there that the town is looking at, what happened back in 2004, 2005, to where they're focusing on certain areas for annexation and controlling development and so on and so forth. Currently there is no interest for the town council to move with any annexations except for this one currently. For background too, we did meet with Byron Brooks, the county administrator, and also John Weiss, the assistant county administrator, to go over the proposal, to give them a heads up, and we didn't receive any objections. So the things I want to go over tonight are going to be the town responsibilities versus the HOA responsibilities, solid waste and recycling, the fire service and protection, politics, additional benefits, and financial impacts. And after that, we'll get into, police protection, just so you understand why the residents of Chaine want to annex into the town of Windermere. And the reason it's involuntary is because maybe not 100% of the people want to come into the town of Windermere, but the majority of the people want to come into the town of Windermere. Next slide, please. So for the Chaine resident, the town would accept the existing agreement, which is the plat entered into with Orange County. So the HOA would continue to be responsible for the roads, common areas, stormwater, and lighting. And the town would memorialize this in an annexation agreement. Now, when there was a lot of annexations previously, there really was an annexation agreement. So we're looking at the plat and we're looking with talking with Orange County to see what was represented at that time, to make sure that the residents of Chaine understand what they're getting into. And we let them know that the responsibility of the roadways, the common areas, the stormwater, and the lighting would be that of Chaine. It would not be passed down to the town of Windermere residents. Next slide, please. Solid waste and recycling, that's a big one for the residents of Chaine. Currently, they have Orange County, which is one time a week, and they're not really happy with that. Currently we have the Tuesdays and Friday pickups with recycling on Tuesdays and then yard waste on Wednesdays. Again, this is not going to negatively impact the residents of Town of Windermere because, again, it's based on the residential customers that we have, and we pass that cost on to the resident themselves through an assessment. So you're not seeing an increase in any assessments or anything like that for solid waste and recycling. Next, please. Fire protection, EMS. Back when, the town was looking for annexations of, the northwest corner of the pocket of Island, Conroe, Windermere, one of the points of contention was, and I think it was also Isleworth, was that Orange County would pull its automatic aid agreement with a COE. Now, what I mean by automatic aid is different than mutual aid. Mutual aid currently is if there's a massive fire, then all hands on deck. All responding agencies can go ahead and go to that fire and fight that fire. If there is an automatic aid agreement, it's more like a you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So in North Ocoee, there are more Ocoee fire departments in order to respond to calls in Orange County, and in South Ocoee / Windermere, there's more areas to where Orange County can respond to a fire or EMS. So they try to help each other out in order to respond to those calls. And Orange County and Ocoee have the agreement now, and they continue to respond to calls, when there's an engine available or EMS available. So the response times will remain the same. And there was no objection that we heard from Byron Brooks or John Weiss that they would look at the possibility of pulling that service due to the fact that we're not looking at bigger annexations or increasing the density of certain locations. So what you have right now is not going to change. Orange County does respond to fire EMS calls instead of Ocoee. So again, nothing's going to change, and what service you have right now would stay exactly the same. Next, please. One of the things I did want to talk about fire EMS, people always ask, will the town look at the possibility of starting their own fire department? And the answer to that right now is no. We're too small. Our budget's not big enough. In order for us to even build and operate a fire station, you'd be looking upwards about $3 million. So the politics of why people would want to annex into the town of Windermere is you have a more local voice in what happens local. Now, Town of Lock residents, they come to farmers market, they play tennis, they, use our parks, they come to all the events and whatnot. And for issues that directly impact them, they don't really have a local say, meaning that, if something's happening at Windermere Road in Maine or Park in Maine, they don't have that local voice. They just have the voice of the district or the commissioner of District 1 in order to address those issues. So they get more of a say of what happens locally. Now, a lot of times people say, well, if we add another area, especially this one that's very limited and gated in, that they can vote out, the council members, and they can run for council. And we kind of encourage, them to run for council. It's part of their dedication to the community, to the area. Believe me, we have 2 council members right now that live in HOAs, and they're always focused on what happens in the community and not what directly impacts the HOA. And they don't lose anything. They don't lose their constitutional officers, the mayor, the sheriff, the county appraiser, the tax collector. So they're getting a little political. Oop. Tony, can we mute everybody but me? So they're getting another level of a political voice for those that will directly impact them, and they also have the ability to sit on various boards and committees that again make recommendations to town council for what happens that directly impacts them. Next slide, please. So again, once annexed, the residents of Shonda Lock will be able to use the boat ramps and tennis courts. Now, we have heard from some residents that, that's why they didn't want them to be a part of the town of Windermere. But the majority of the homes that are along Shonda Lock, they're actually already lakefront and they have boathouses. And with the amount of people that the town would be looking to add, any impacts would be de minimis. And also, the town of Windermere is hiring a public works coordinator, which will be working with, the residents and also people that are currently using the tennis courts, the pavilions, and the open areas to schedule them and make it more efficient for everybody involved. The residents also would be able to attend the resident-only events like Holiday Hoopla and other events that we have throughout the year just to celebrate the town of Windermere. The residents would also receive the discount of town hall for rentals. Again, it's first come, first serve. So again, with the amount of people that are being added or would be added to the town of Windermere, the impacts would not be significant than what people believe. Again, they can sit on boards and committees, DRB, HPP, Tree, LRP, Ways, and PNR. And one of the big things for the Chaine residents related to disaster recovery. Now, I know we have an incoming tropical storm / hurricane that we're monitoring right now, but if something were to hit, we're able to dedicate our resources within the 2.2 square miles that we currently have in the town of Windermere. Now, in Chaine, they're at the beck and call of the entire county. So the last storm that came through, the hurricane that came through, they didn't have their yard debris picked up within 3 to 5 months. We were able to do that within 2 weeks. So again, this service is not going to take away from the general residents of the town of Windermere. It's just an added service to those that want to be a part of the town of Windermere. And it's pretty much a testament to, staff, the elected officials, that people want to come into the town of Windermere to get a better quality of life and better level of service. Next, please. So a lot of people ask, especially the residents of Chaine, what are the financial impacts going to be for them if we're to annex into the town of Windermere? And the median amount of money that the Chaine residents would have to pay is about $1,251 per fiscal year. So they're getting the added service of twice a week pickup for solid waste. They're getting, abilities to do, boat passes, tennis passes, participate in a lot of things. But also when we get to police protection, which is one of the biggest, positives of annexing the town of Windermere, they have not seen that financial impact as a negative. And for the town of Windermere, the financial impact would be a positive because we would receive about $500,000 each and every fiscal year from the annexation through ad valorem taxes, also ancillary tax as well, that would help us offset a lot of the expenditures and also help us plan to fund our CIP for roads, stormwater, drainage, potable water systems, wastewater systems, all sorts of stuff. It gives that additional bump for us to utilize to help us get a lot of these projects funded. Next, please. Now I'll turn over to Chief Ogden, and then after Chief Ogden, we'll get into questions. But based on the response times, you can see why the Chaine residents definitely want to annex into the town of Windermere. So, Chief.
Yep. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, to the residents and some of the Chaine residents. For us, there's probably just a few things that you guys would like to know. First and foremost, from the police department side, this would be minimal impact on us. We don't require any additional services, additional police officers or vehicles or anything of that nature. We fully understand that we can envelop Chaine should it come to pass with the current system. It'd actually be a positive for us in the fact that if you've ever gotten your vehicle for 12 hours and drove 2 square miles nonstop for 12 hours, it'd be nice to have a little extra scenery for some of our officers there. But I think the biggest note for the Chaine residents, which the Windermere residents are already aware of, is that's the calls for service and our response times. And across the board, if you'll notice, our response times are 3 minutes, no matter what call that is. It's an emergency call for service or a non-emergency call for service. We're there roughly within 3 minutes, 3 to 6 minutes. And that's pretty important. I often say when minutes count, we're just seconds away. And when you look at the calls for service for the Orange County Sheriff's Office that you guys received in 2023, you didn't actually receive any emergency calls. There was actually one, which was a traffic accident in the front of Chaine, so it wasn't in your location. And that was about a 12-minute response time. And then the others were the code 2. We actually call our codes backwards from what we do. That was a 37-minute and 23-second response time. And then a code 1 response call, which could be an alarm call, could be you call the police for something. That's a 1 hour and 8-minute response time. And that's actually pretty fast for the sheriff's office, considering I spent 25 years there and I'm familiar with the response times for, areas such as ours. So I think one of the most important things is the level of service that we can provide, not in our response times, but what it is our officers do. All of our officers are also CIT trained, that's crisis trained, and they're also 100% of our officers are CPR trained. Not, believe it or not all officers are CPR trained these days. And we actually respond to all the medical calls within the town. And where that has come to great fruition is routinely several times a year, we actually respond and deploy AEDs, perform CPR in residents or passerbys. And actually just a couple months ago, if you saw the Orange Observer, 2 of our officers actually responded probably within 30 seconds to somebody having a heart attack in their vehicle and saved his life. So again, when those critical minutes count, we are there. Our response time is within 3 minutes, and that's most important. So we'd be happy to see if the annexation came through. It'd be great for our officers. They already know most of the residents. That would be also an additional factor there is our Windermere Police Department safety watch, where I directly respond to the residents usually within a couple of days of when a major event or a crime or something that's happened. You make sure that you hear directly from me. Also, all the residents have my phone number. You can have it as well. It's on a website. And a lot of them will reach out and contact me if something happens in a community or in the area, and we have a pretty quick response time to that. Robert, I'll turn it back to you or whoever's next.
No, thank you, Chief. We'll get any questions, but before that, I just want to state again, the positives outweigh any negatives that I believe some of the residents may have. The fears of adding another community into the town of Windermere. We go through a cost benefit analysis. We look at the development, we looked at it's compact, that it's contiguous, and that it makes sense for the town of Windermere to possibly bring this in. So we did that analysis, and the negatives are very few, and the positives are well beyond what we expected. So we'll be happy to answer any questions. And again, one of the positives that you live in the town of Windermere is that you have direct access not only to your council members, but also staff. And that was one of the big selling points for the residents of Chaine, to where if they text me, call me, chief, any of the council members, they'll get a response within 24 hours. So again, it's one of the positives of living in the town of Windermere. And we're willing to go ahead and look at providing this service just right outside of our border. So with that, I'll open up to any questions that anybody might have. And Tanya, I'll have to have you as moderator to see whose hand's raised.
Yeah, if you guys will just raise your hands. All right, I see a couple people putting them up. That's good. All right, we'll go ahead and we will start with Nancy next. Nancy, you have to unmute if you would be so kind.
Of course. Thank you.
There we go. We can hear you now.
I was just wondering why the town council decided that the residents of Windermere couldn't vote on this issue.
So the town council has not fully made that decision yet, but there's a cost to that. Number one. The other portion is the council has had lengthy discussions regarding strategic annexations for some time. And by strategic, I mean those that are waterfront, that are certainly right next to our borders, that we have long-term relationships with. It's a little bit about controlling your borders as best you can, not to make not in any political way, just in terms of being able to manage and plan for a little bit larger swath. You can't, it's just a positive piece in terms of controlled growth.
Okay, I'm not sure that I understand that, but okay. And as long as I'm being selected here, I was curious, it's a gated community, right? So if I wanted to go take a walk around their community, I wouldn't be allowed to do it?
No, you would not. And that is similar to the new development that's over on the east side of town. They used to be the Rosser Reserve. It is a gated community. The gated community was more of a policy than anything that was in town ordinances. But no, you would not be allowed because it is a gated community to access in there and use their roads or their sidewalks. Again, those are going to be privately held and privately funded.
And Nancy, just so one of the like Robert said, one of the advantages is those individuals do pay for their own roads. Council can decide to do a referendum that includes the entire town if they so desire. It's just that it is a decision that council would need to make in that direction and path.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Brianna, did I say that right, or is it Brina or Brianna?
It's Brenna. Thank you.
Brenna, sorry, my apologies.
No worries. I just have a clarifying question. If you could go back to that first map, for the non-Chaine Duloc HOA, are they completely out of this? So this has nothing to do with that section of Chaine Duloc, correct?
No,
No.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, no, that area is also part of the annexation process. Why that's just shown like that, those properties are outside of the actual formal HOA, but they are still part of the Chaine Duloc community, so they are part of the annexation.
Okay, so they will be part of the annexation, and do they get to vote then still?
Yes, they do. Yes, any of the properties that are considered for annexation would be would be able to vote. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brad,
Yes, sir.
quick question. Do they have to be current registered voters? I thought we mentioned that one time in the past.
Yes, yeah. When the vote in the referendum, like any kind of vote, it's registered voters. So it's for the registered voters to vote, not just because you own a property there. They have to be a registered voter, and it would pass if it's 50% plus one vote of the people that vote in the referendum. So it's not, it's possible, it could get approved without an actual majority of everybody that lives there, but that's the way the process is. It's based registered voters and a simple majority of registered voters in the vote.
And again, as further background, we've held meetings on this subject for about 4 or 5 years now. I believe it started in 2018 up until now. And a lot of the responses we had back were positive. And that's why we're navigating this process right now.
Next up with their hand is Galaxy J3 Prime. If you could give us your full name, we'd appreciate it. Galaxy J3, there you go. You're unmuted now. If you'll just give us your name and address, and then you can ask any question that you may have. We're not able to hear you. Do you want to try one more time?
If they can put in the chat as well. We can answer any questions they have in the chat.
Yeah, it's a good idea. For whatever reason, we're not able to hear Galaxy J3 Prime. So if you want to put in the chat, we will definitely answer the question there as well. Any additional questions from anyone?
Hi, I have my hand raised. I'm not sure if you can see it.
I think I do see a hand raised. Are you Galaxy J3 Prime?
No, I'm Sarah Lopez. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Go ahead and ask your question.
All right, very good. More than a question, I love the question actually that Miss Nancy asked, and that is that we are not able to vote. So a couple of comments. One is, I love how we're always thinking about everybody else, but not our own residents. And that is somewhat obvious by us not being able to have a voice or a vote. Two, I always love also how we think about everybody else, but no one thinks about the residents when it comes to us. And let me give you a very basic example. So Windermere High School has the name Windermere, yet we are not able to go to Windermere the same way that now everybody else will have access to our things, but we will not have access to their things. So we're not able to get into the neighborhood. We're not able to go through their gates. We're not able to walk their streets. We're not even able to talk or even vote. So that's something to definitely consider by the council, I hope. So that was just my comments. But as always, I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, who was that, please?
Sarah Lopez at 110 Forest Street.
And just to clarify too, is that the town of Windermere doesn't have any control over Orange County Public Schools. It's up to them for districting and where the residents go to school, but we can advocate for the town of Windermere residents to attend certain schools, as well as you still have the ability to access, because you are Orange County taxpayers, of accessing all of Orange County's parks and recreation amenities that are throughout the county.
No, and I definitely understand that. I guess I'm making a comparison of the things that are continued to be taken away from us without us having a vote.
So yeah, I don't, in order to, I don't think anyone's going to take anything away per se. I think that the issue is, and that's why we have a representative council for all those residents in town. So, but definitely we understand and hear and listen to what you have to say, Sarah, and you're always good with your feedback, and we appreciate it.
Okay. And since I still have my hand up, let me also share that I cannot stress how much I appreciate our police force and how amazing they are. I am going to say that I think they're running a little tight. And we continue to give them more and more responsibilities. And even though I appreciate how quickly they respond, I'm also going to say that I definitely miss seeing them around downtown. And what I mean by that is downtown used to be a place where you could slow down because you had to follow the law, or you would be able to make sure that you were cognizant of the residents and things. And now I can tell you how many times I get flipped off by going at the appropriate time, how many times I'm being passed in the double line, how many times. So having a residence and the experience of giving the police officers the opportunity to have a broader scenery is not what I actually would advocate for us to be able to annex an additional neighborhood. It will be more of let's be cognizant of the police officers and give them the resources that they need to be able to take care of what they already have. But thank you again.
Thank you very much. Chief, do you have any concerns about resources in terms of this size annexation, in terms of police resources?
I don't. I think it'd be easy for us to there'd be a really de minimis addition for us, and her comments were duly noted. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, and we take all the feedback and try to do everything we can to deal with those issues that we hear. As we all know that, yeah, sometimes people aren't the nicest. That's for sure. It's super frustrating, and especially when you're just trying to keep our roads safe. So I saw a comment, I think from Karen Fay. She wants to hear the negatives. And she kind of indicated that there's no way it can be all golden. I'm sure there's some negatives. I'm probably I can't think of a lot offhand. But I think what I would say, Karen, is that with many annexations, there are certainly negatives. Discontent in the HOA. We've seen, infrastructure that wasn't properly repaired or maintained, that would come with a burden to the town. Those are some negatives that can happen. What we've learned kind of the hard way many times is that you have to make sure that you do your due diligence ahead of time to make sure those things don't happen, that you have very solid agreements. Back in the day, there was annexations that either didn't have agreements or maybe weren't the most robust agreements. So we become more adept at that. a small annexation like this of a relatively, pretty much full lakefront area comes with, of similar houses and similar makeup of people that you already see here in our community. It definitely has less potential drawbacks than some other annexations that maybe have been discussed over the years. We've been pretty conservative in this particular area and how we do things in terms of annexations. So I know there's always discussion and has been discussion in the past of larger annexations, but that is not something that I've been supportive of. We have to be careful when we do this. We can't have, we have to be smart and wise about how we do this, because we want to include individuals that appreciate the town and appreciate what we have to offer. We're not for everybody. I think we all know that. And that's why we're kind of careful on the size here and who we do include.
And Mayor, if I can add on.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the sidewalks, roadway, drainage, or anything else happens within the HOA, we would do the same thing that we do with Marina Bay and Sunset Bay, to where we would create a municipal service benefit unit to where only the residents of that HOA or that area that agreed to help fund those that infrastructure would have to pay. So that cost would not be on the town of Windermere in general. It would just be that of that HOA or the area that's going to be annexed in.
Robert, I have a question when you guys finish the chat stuff.
I think that was the only thing in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, I see one more thing in the chat. As far as diluting the voter base,
we did talk about this. I think Brad, did we say it's was it like 81 or 100 registered voters?
Yes, Mayor. At the last count, I do need to get it updated, but the last count I had, it was a little bit over 80 registered voters in that area.
Okay, good. My memory is still working a little bit. So, listen, I'll tell you, we've had these, we've really had good conversations about this topic, Karen, and I do understand that people do worry about that, but I will tell you what we have found is that that individuals and people who participate on council and committees from every portion of the town have been, they're all here for the same reason. We all like a little bit something different. We have that availability, but the contribution has been, the quality of the council people that have participated. I think honestly we could use some more folks. I think about the time when everybody, did their two terms on council, like Jerry and whenever I vote, I see you. I would love to see more of those folks who contribute at that level. That's what makes us unique and special. I think people know what they get here. So I think people are interested in the best of what we have to offer. And I think it's often a pretty good trade-off. So, no, appreciate everything you added there, Karen. Thanks.
I have a question if I can. So the 74 parcels, is that the non-Shondelocks, just to refresh my memory?
The 74 is everything within the annexation area, including the like the roadway, which is actually considered a parcel because it's privately owned. So that's all parcels within the annexation area.
Okay, so how many of them are technically Shondelock subdivision currently, and how many of them are the ones that are just going to get pulled in with the subdivision?
I don't know that I have that breakdown, because even though they're not part of the HOA, they are still behind the gate. And I believe there is an agreement where they still have the responsibility with the maintenance and operation of that area. So they're not being really pulled in. They're part
Okay.
of the Shonda Lock community.
But
And
they're not part of their like HOA in terms of voting with their HOA and things, or are they? Or you don't know?
I
They're
don't
not
know.
members of the HOA at all.
All right. There is the
We've
one.
also had that happen before, Brad. I believe that happened in Marina Bay,
Yes.
some degree, and also what is it, Sunset Place or something?
Sunset Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunset Bay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's
And
not
there
unheard of.
There is one property that is a little bit unique. The property on the far east side of the annexation area that abuts the town. That property is not behind the gates of Sean Duloc. So it's actually doesn't have a tie at all to the HOA, but it is part of the annexation area. And that property owner has been in our workshops, and they have indicated their support of being annexed into the town as well.
Okay, so I have two other questions. So for every time, we have like a variance or something, we, get feedback to the 500, 500-foot radius. So do you have a number of how many people have like responded back that they're for or against it as of now?
We do not, no.
Is that something we can get? Like, I mean, whether it be a survey of how many are currently interested or not?
I mean, that's, a decision by the council if they would want to do that. Robert, I'll be honest though, we've had many meetings, as Robert and the mayor have said, and we've had very good attendance at most of them. So but it's not required to be done.
Yeah, the town wouldn't be approaching this unless we felt that there was enough buy-in from the community itself for Shonda residents to annex into the town of.
So when we did it in 2018, did it ever make it to the referendum then?
No, the reason why is because the town council was looking at all the areas that have had an interest in annexing to the town of Windermere. And again, that was when the northwest corner of Apopka, Vineland, and Conroe Windermere was looking to develop from Tavistock.
Uh-huh.
So the town, what we did was we took a look at, okay, what strategically would be in the benefit of the town to possibly look for annexations. That included this area, I think Windermere Country Club, as well as Isleworth. In addition to that, it included the northwest corner of Apopka, Vineland, Conroe, Windermere.
Okay.
And the development plans for that northwest corner went through or didn't go through.
Uh-huh.
So the town backed off of any possibility of looking to annex in that area. But that was more of looking at a joint planning agreement than a huge annexation thing, because again, I think the town and the residents have been very selective of, which communities would fit right in with the town of Windermere, and I think this one will.
Okay, so back then in 2018, we didn't have anybody from Shonda Lock approach us about this.
We did.
Oh, we did. Okay, but not as favorable as it is now.
No, that during those discussions, and again, that was pre-pandemic,
right?
There was a lot of excitement to come into the town of Windermere, and the focus, I believe, was to try to enter into a joint planning agreement with the county.
Okay.
That, okay, well, here is the extent of whatever the future boundaries of the town of Windermere will be in the next 20 years. And of course, if you include anything that has to relate to Isleworth, the county is going to object because that has a huge hit to their Orange County Sheriff's Office MSTU, also their fire MSTU, because they're mostly using that to help subsidize a lot of the fire stations and stuff that they have to do in Horizons West. So again, when the pandemic happened, we pulled back from that, and also we didn't want to get into a fight with the county. But when we met with the county about this, again, it's very selective. It makes sense. It's a gated community. The residents of the Shonda Lock area are responsible for everything they're responsible for now. They will agree to whatever the current conditions are underneath their current plat. And again, when we talked to the county, they were very impressed with the fact that we're more restrictive and we're not looking to annex in to increase density and intensity.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And just one further note too is I think Windermere Country Club initially wanted to annex in because their golf course was being sold to a private party, and there's a lot of litigation behind that as well. So there's really no appetite for the town at the time to look to annex in that area for, again, increasing the intensity and density of any development.
Mm-hmm. Any additional questions this evening? Robert, do we have another meeting scheduled with everyone?
Next Monday, same time, same place.
Yep, that's what I thought. So, so we'll also, you know, if you have additional questions, concerns, or want to make additional, or have additional people come and hear more about this, go ahead and take advantage of that, and we'll do it one more time, and go from there. If there's nothing else or no further questions for the good of the order, we will adjourn at 6:54. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate everyone's participation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, everybody.